first off, can you tell everyone about yourself and how you ended up on your path?
My name's Chris. I'm originally from Australia. I think what best sums up what got me on the path that I am now is a mixture of things, including what feels like fate. Something like a little birdie told me to do the things that I did that made me end up here in Japan. But also lots of really good mentors and people. So right now I'm living in Japan. I'm studying here and planning to live in Japan after I graduate. On one level, it might have started when I was little and my sister, who had exchanged to Japan, she's a lot older than me. She would read me stories when I was a baby in Japanese. Yeah, like the very hungry caterpillar and things like that. So I think from a young age was maybe having some seeds planted unconsciously. But then in high school, I started to study Japanese at a really basic level. I was pretty good at it, but I never saw it as this could become my life. Owing to the best teacher I've ever had, Miss Michelle Gray, she basically kicked me in the butt when I was in grade 9 and said, you shouldn't waste this ability that you have. Basically said, I want you to keep taking Japanese. And so I did, and then opportunities opened up. Biggest one being this huge international event in Japan that I was selected to be on the team for because I had an interest in Japanese culture and I was studying the language. That just completely changed my life. Basically just going to another country and then being immersed in an international multicultural space with other people my age, it put me in a position where I was like, oh my god, my idea of the world is so much smaller than I thought it was. My scope of what I thought was possible was just small urban upbringing in a small town, small city. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, but surrounded by people who didn't really aspire to go out into the world. They were totally content with the, graduate, go to a university locally and start a life in the town you are and then expand from there. But being surrounded, in that environment, it wasn't really motivating me to become a world citizen. It's what even is that, what does it mean to be connected in that way? And that all led me to where I am now because it basically just made me consider more possibilities, including the idea of coming to Japan and diving into a different cultural environment. So basically my last few years was all about working up to that, and then I eventually got into a program here in Japan.
So what is something that you learned during all of this that you wish you knew sooner, that you could give advice to your younger self?
In some sense, I don't want to tell him anything because part of it was the surprise, and that was all a joy to figure things out and find things out without any guidance. But I think if there was one thing I would tell my younger self, it would be to just be more open-minded, be available. That's the word that comes to mind. How available could you make yourself to anything that could come your way? And it sounds like a simple thing to do, and I guess in some sense it is, but I think a lot of us don't make ourselves even consider the possibility of being available to receiving joy and happiness or the stuff that we want in our life. And so I think I would say that to my 12-year-old self or something who wasn't really in that space at all. It was more in order to get somewhere, you have to earn it. I have to do all the hard work, and that's, I think, one paradigm, but there are, I think, new ways of looking at things which include, not discounting hard work, but also the sort of more opening up to actually allowing ourselves to receive things.
To just maybe say yes more to things and
say yes more. That's
right.
Definitely a part of it. But also, just to add on that point, getting clearer on your no as well is a huge thing for me. That's been a part of my journey because actually I am more of a yes person. I think I just have a big yes to the world, which is not always the best thing because I think fundamentally it is, but sometimes saying yes to things that I don't really have a full 100% yes to, maybe even if it's 95%, there's still, if there's that 5% of me in me that's kind of niggling, going you don't really want to be doing this, then that is the part that I want to honor more. To me, getting clearer on, or just being able to say no, I think being able to say no really easily makes the yeses feel more powerful.
What is something, building onto that you would give advice to anyone?
Learning how to feel And what I mean by that is, and it's really connected to the whole thing about saying yes and no and being available, because I don't think we can be fully available if we are not in tune with our body. I think generally, like, we have been educated out of our bodies and up into our heads and, you know, slightly to one side, like left brain. And we've sort of totally forgotten about how to tune into our feelings in our body, and things like therapy are only just starting to become more normalized. The idea that it's okay to go and ask for help, and it's okay to ask for support in feeling our feelings, especially for males, like the idea that it's not okay to feel, like, don't cry, don't be a wuss or whatever. So I would say, yeah, learning how to just be in our bodies and experience and feel all of our feelings and feel all of them fully. It's sort of like a two-part thing. So it's not just about feel happiness, but it's like, no, can we really go into our sadness when we're feeling sad and listen to what it's trying to tell us? Or even our anger, when we're angry, can we feel the tension in our shoulders and our neck and our face? How can we embrace all of our feelings as, you know, waves of just sensations that are coming, and listen to what they want to tell us, because they are definitely trying to tell us things, and there's a wisdom in there that can guide us in where we want to go in our lives that our brain cannot even begin to comprehend. Like, we can logically plan out our lives for as long as we like, but if we're not listening to what we're feeling, then we might end up doing something that we totally don't have a yes to, kind of thing. That's one thing that I really want the world to know, especially the patriarchal side of the world, because I think the feeling side is definitely more, at least traditionally, considered feminine, or like basically opening up to our feminine side in that sense. Yeah.
It's very often like a stereotype about Japan to be like stuck in this hierarchical, misogynistic way of thinking. How did you experience it, someone coming from Australia?
I don't think I've really been able to dive that deep into Japanese culture to be able to like comment on, especially in like the work context and things like that. But I know that in my university in Japan, like it's well known for the terrible male to female ratio. Something like only 15 or 20% of the students in University of Tokyo are female. So there's just not much female representation in any part of the university, from the student body to faculty, and just the way our voices get heard. Of course, it's always going to be skewed towards the male side. I've got female friends here that are speaking out against that and working to change that, and I hear from them more of the sort of inside stories of how it affects work and school culture, and everything from curriculum planning to decisions, policy decisions. But I think, yeah, maybe the biggest difference between Australia and here is just, yeah, seeing women as equal, because they definitely are.
Do you feel like that's changing and improving in Japan nowadays?
Yeah, it is. It feels like it's mostly the older generation that's still clinging on to those old, outdated ideas. And, you know, through, you know, social media and petitions and just the ability for people to mobilize together is definitely changing that. However, I still think it's slow. This is a culture where things go really, really, really slowly, incrementally, rather than like radical changes overnight. So I think it is improving, but there's definitely some need for radical change at the same time.
So building on that a little bit, do you dream big and want to create change in any way, shape or form?
Yeah, I think I dream big, and sometimes I love being in this space of possibility. And I do want to make a big splash, but I think as I'm growing, I'm sort of feeling that the way that I want to do that might not be how I initially expected. I think I always imagined myself being like that radical, you know, I'm going to make a business that creates radical change. And maybe that's still the case. I'm open to that. I'm available to that. But I'm also, I think, as my availability is opening up to other options, I'm feeling more drawn towards other ways of creating change. And to me, I think the biggest ripple that I would love to give myself in the world is connected to like changing ourselves, like personal transformation, and how that is equally, if not as more important than the sort of big change out there, and working on just like how can we be fully with ourselves and in our own power, that we can affect things just easily, rather than feeling like we are victims and therefore we have to change the system in order to feel like we're not victims anymore, for example. And that's not discounting that there are definitely people who are being victimized right now, and social systems do need to be changed. I think personally more drawn towards the let's change ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on doing the things we can do here that makes the social systemic change easier, if that makes sense.
What motivates you when you're working on something, when you're trying to create change? What is it that drives you?
I think it's the bigger picture always, like seeing to me, like when I'm in the nitty gritty, when all other energy sources have depleted, it's always the image or the higher order goal that keeps me. And I think it is probably similar for a lot of people. That's what keeps us going. The me in 5 years time to get to that point, like this is really important right now.
Who is the you in 5 years? What is your dream?
It feels like a amorphous blob right now of a bunch of different things that maybe will end up all being connected. But it's really interesting. Last night, I could see myself in 5 years as doing a mixture of like the teaching productivity and trying to embody it as well, obviously. Teaching productivity along with things like integrity skills and feeling skills. And also, this is like really specific, but this methodology that I've been following called the Getting Things Done method. It's like a famous methodology for productivity and creativity as well, like increasing your capacity to like live without anything in your head so you can be fully open to creation. I see like all of these things like kind of as one thing, and I'm like, wow, how could I design something sort of that being on the tightrope between productivity but also living life without the need for productivity, because at the end of the day, like productivity isn't everything, and that's very much in the like doing things mindset. Like we need to do things to be valuable. So I would love to create a new paradigm. I think in the biggest dream, my highest vision would be to create a new way of doing and being in the world, and to embody that.
So during all of this, any like significant achievement that you have achieved recently, anything that you're proud of, that you would like to share with us?
I mean, part of my like being available sort of theme, maybe as part of that, I've been just exploring a bunch of things at university, including diving into the deep end with learning law, and especially learning international humanitarian law, which is like a subset of law that applies in armed conflicts. And basically I dived into this class and then ended up being on my university's team, and we won the Japan regional round for this moot court competition where, it's like a mock court trial. We ended up winning the Japan round, so then we represented Japan at the Asia Pacific regional round. It was like something like 30 countries from Asia Pacific, and we like were not law students, and we were going up against like all law students in the region, and we ended up coming second, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
So that was earlier this year. Yeah, so I think that was it was another affirmation that like, wow, like I can actually do cool things when I put my mind to it. Like I did not expect to get that far in the competition, and lots of thoughts and feelings were coming up, like you're not good enough, like you're a fraud, like you can't do this against literally people who are training to be professionals. But I mean, it just proved that like I could if I put my mind to it, owing to having a great team and wonderful teammates and a great team dynamic. Like we were able to pull it off, so that was pretty fun. That's been like one of the achievements, I guess, that I've had recently.
The type of things that you have the potential to achieve, you just don't believe in yourself.
It was a story of overcoming that one in me who didn't think that he could do cool things anymore, because I've grown out of that.
Being in your 20s and trying to figure out who you are and not really knowing where to go in the world to achieve the perfect you.
Yeah, and to tie that experience back into what I said earlier about yeses and nos, it was really important that I think it was really important that I tried that, because the biggest thing that I got from the whole competition, I realized, that is something that I definitely do not want to do in the future. I do not want to be a lawyer. As much as the content is interesting, and I think this sort of law and frameworks for minimizing human suffering during wartime, I think it's crucial, and people need to be doing this, but not me. That was my no. That felt really clear and felt really good to be able to say, no, I don't want to do that. Despite all of the opportunities that were opening up in that direction, including, we can get you jobs at the UN. That would have been some kind of success story, but it wouldn't have been one for me, because it's not really what I want to do. Using our 20s to explore and try a bunch of random things, like I think is really important, and what I want to be doing. That was, if anything, That was my biggest resolution that I set in the new year for my 20s. Do not lock myself down into any one thing. Go wide, explore everything.
It's a great message, and I feel like that's a great thing to end this on as well. So thank you so much for your time.